In 2012, the best artificial intelligence on Earth still got about 1 in 4 photographs wrong. Then 3 people working out of a bedroom cut that almost in half. 1 in 6. Overnight. And here's the strange part. The idea that fixed it was not new. It had been sitting in old textbooks for 30 years. What finally turned that idea into something the whole world would grab was one number from 2020, and almost nobody can tell you what it is. Keep it in your back pocket.
Leo here, and this is my favorite story in tech. For 60 years, the smartest people alive kept promising machines that think, and twice the money just dried up. They call those the AI winters.
Hi all, I'm May. And what gets me is that the idea was never the missing piece. 3 separate things all had to grow up at the same moment, and not one of them was a cleverer thought.
Maya here. Yeah, and ordinary people paid for all 3 without ever knowing it. Your gaming rig, your photos, your posts.
The 3 curves are compute, data, and better designs. When they crossed, a research toy became a tool 100 million strangers would pick up. That crossing is the whole episode. Call it the crossing because that word is going to keep coming back.
And before you answer that, May, the comments already asked the sharper version. Somebody wrote, quote, "How did AI go from a punchline to everywhere in barely 10 years?" That is exactly the question. The short answer is those 3 curves, and the long answer is the next 20 minutes.
Everything before 2012 was promises. Everything after is the 10 years that finally delivered, and it starts with a part built for video games.
Okay, so what actually broke the dam in 2012? A single contest, a million photo test called AlexNet, and every year teams tried to teach a computer to name what was in each picture. This whole episode lives on layer 5 of the AI stack, the hardware, the physical chips every one of these breakthroughs secretly ran on. Because the winning team that year did something nobody took seriously. They trained their network on 2 graphics cards, video game parts.
And here is why that was heresy. A graphics chip, a GPU, was built to paint explosions in games. It does thousands of tiny sums at once. It turns out a neural network is also just thousands of tiny sums at once. Same shape as the game, different picture.
The network was called AlexNet. Alex Krzyzewski built it with Ilya Sutskever and their advisor, this man, Jeffrey Hinton. There's an old rule in construction. The load is always there, you just need a beam that can carry it. The math for a network like this was 30 years old. It kept collapsing under its own weight. The chip was finally the beam that could hold it up. So how well did it work? The best score the year before missed about 26 of every 100 pictures. AlexNet missed about 15.
Hold on. Is that jump actually a big?
It was enormous. In that field, shaving off 2 or 3 points was a good year. This erased 10 in one shot. 1 in 6 wrong when the world was stuck at 1 in 4. Every serious lab saw that number and pivoted inside a month.
Get this, the whole thing trained in about a week, on 2 cards, in Krzyzewski's bedroom. The cold fact is a hobbyist rig beat every research budget on the planet.
It's the same lesson every time. New idea? No. New muscle. The trend says once the chips could carry the old math, everything downstream just followed.
Which is why I keep coming back to that one silent object, the gaming chip. Keep it in the corner of your eye, because before this video ends, I want to show you why a toy became the most important scientific instrument of the decade.
That's compute. 1 curve of 3. The next 10 minutes is where people lose the thread, because the other 2 curves get almost no credit and did just as much work. Before we keep going, one small favor that actually moves the needle. If this is landing for you, tap like, then subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss the rest. 2 taps, completely free, and it pushes this in front of more people who need it. So which curve actually mattered most? You can argue this 3 ways, and where you land changes what you watch for every time this field moves again. May stakes it all on the designs. Maya says it was the data. And the chips are sitting right there in the middle, taking all the credit.
My case is simple. Faster chips only help if there's something worth running on them. In 2012, and again in 2017, brand new designs showed up. What was it called? The transformer. That one. A shape that let a network read a whole sentence at once, instead of crawling one word at a time.
Okay, but a design reads nothing if the shelf is empty. I keep redesigning the same clothing line. Version 9, then version 10. I only get sharper because I have more to look at each round. The machine is exactly the same. It got good because we handed it the whole internet to study.
And that shelf is the piece people skip. The chips did the heavy lifting. I mean, the chips made the heavy lifting possible, but somebody still had to stock the shelf. It's the same instinct that has me restoring an old card catalog at home, every note in its own labeled drawer. A researcher named Fei Li did exactly that with 1 million photos, so a machine would finally have something honest to learn from. No ImageNet, and there is no...
The data did the real work. The design just rode along.
The design is what let the machine use the data at all. Pour 1 billion photos into a 1990s network and you still get nothing. AlexNet and the Transformer, both brand new shapes, both landed in the exact years everything jumped. The record shows that is not a coincidence.
Okay, that's fair.
So, as I was saying about that shelf, this is where it lands. Ask which curve mattered most, and the honest answer is that it's the wrong question. Pull any one of the three away and the whole thing collapses. No chips, the data just sits there. No data, the chips grind on nothing. No new designs, and neither one adds up to anything.
Same shape as a real kitchen, best knife on earth, empty fridge, and you still go hungry. You need all three on the counter at the same time, or dinner never happens.
So here's the ruling. It was the crossing, all three curves rising into the same decade at once, that did it. And that crossing is exactly the thing I want to draw for you next, because seeing it beats hearing it every time.
Watch this, because it's the one picture that's the spine of the whole story. 3 curves, 1 board, and you'll never read an AI headline the same way again. May, put it up.
Start with compute, the chips, then data, the internet, then design, the architectures. 3 arrows, all feeding one thing, and that thing is deep learning finally works. The part that took me years to really see is this. So stay with me. Each of these curves was climbing quietly on its own for a decade. Chips got roughly 1,000 times cheaper to run the same math. The internet turned into the biggest textbook ever assembled, billions of pages and photos, all free for the reading. And researchers kept inventing better shapes for the network, right up to the 2017 design that powers the chatbots, which is episode 4's whole subject. Not one of those 3 was enough alone. But the moment all 3 were tall enough at the same time, the whole thing just lifted off the ground. That is the crossing.
Think of it like 3 ramps meeting at 1 runway.
That woman labeling 1 million photos was Fei Li. The dataset she built, ImageNet, is the data curve you're looking at. Honestly, this is my gym membership all over again. I bought the membership. I bought the shoes. I bought the water bottle. And nothing happened until all 3 showed up on the same Tuesday morning.
That, weirdly, is exactly how the crossing works. 1 curve, nothing. 2 curves, still nothing. Let me count it out loud. 1,000 times more compute, times a textbook the size of the internet, times a design that can actually read it. 3 multipliers stacked, and the result isn't a little better, it's a different machine.
And pull any 1 ramp away and the plane never
leaves the ground. Right. Which is why the doom takes and the hype takes both miss it. It wasn't one genius. It was 3 slow climbs that happened to peak together.
So if all 3 were finally tall enough by 2012, why did the world not notice for another 10 years? One machine answered that question before any chatbot did, and it did it on a game board. It answered it on a game board. But park that for 1 minute, because the number I flagged up top lives right here, in text. Around 2019, a model called GPT-2 could write a paragraph that almost held together. A clever party trick. Nothing you'd rely on.
GPT-2 had 1.5 billion parameters, and the obvious bet was, what if we just make it bigger? Most researchers expected that to fizzle. More size, smaller and smaller payoff. That is how almost everything in engineering works.
I want to bring in someone who knows this whole stretch of the story cold. Matteo, are you on the line?
I'm here. Hold on though. The real surprise wasn't that bigger was better. 9 times out of 10 in engineering, doubling the size buys you almost nothing. Everyone expected the payoff to shrink. It just never shrank. It kept paying straight through, farther than anyone had a right to expect.
Slow down here, this next part is the one people rewind. It's the same recipe as GPT-2, same idea, just poured into a far bigger pot.
So in 2020, they shipped GPT-3, and this is the number Erica promised you at the very top. 175 billion parameters, about 100 times bigger than the model from the year before. And instead of fizzling, it crossed a line. It could suddenly do things nobody trained it to do. Translate, write code, answer riddles, all just from having read enough. Same machine, same recipe, only bigger. And bigger turned out to be a kind of idea all by itself. And Maya, I can see the question forming, so go ahead and put it to us.
Fine. You keep saying parameters like I already know the word. What exactly is a parameter in one sentence?
One adjustable dial. Training sets each one to a number. That's it. Episode 5 is the whole tour, but in one line, a parameter is a dial.
So 175 billion dials, all set by reading, that I can hold.
That's it exactly. And that's the piece most people miss. The intelligence isn't written in, it's tuned in.
Here's the tease. 175 billion was the floor, not the ceiling. Stack the next few years on top, and that count climbs into the trillions. Carry that with you. Because wait until you see what all that scale did the very day it finally went public.
Six years before the chatbot, the machine fired a warning shot the experts couldn't ignore, and it landed on an ancient board game called Go. 2 players, black and white stones, and rules you can learn in a minute. But Go is deceptively deep. There are more possible board positions than there are atoms in the known universe. You cannot brute force it, you cannot memorize it, so everyone assumed a true Go master was safe from machines for at least another decade.
Then in March 2016, a program called AlphaGo sat down in Seoul against Yi Sidol. He was one of the greatest players who has ever lived. And when the 5 games were finished, the machine had won.
Wait. Say that score out loud. Slowly.
4 games to 1. AlphaGo beat the best human on Earth, 4-1, at the one game everyone swore was safe.
But the score isn't even the part that stuck. In Game 2, there was a single move, Move 37, and what do they call it? The commentary team, that one. They were sure it was a misprint, a typo, a machine glitch.
It was no glitch. AlphaGo's own estimate was that a human would have played that move about 1 time in 10,000. It was alien. I mean, alien to us, not to the machine. And then it turned out to be brilliant, the move that quietly won the whole game. Fan Hui, the European champion who had been advising the AlphaGo team, studied it and called it, quote, so beautiful.
That's the moment the researchers stopped sleeping. Not because it won, because it was creative.
That's the payoff I promised you. Remember the silent gaming chip from the very start? AlphaGo ran on thousands of them. So does everything since. The toy really did become the instrument.
So the experts knew by 2016. But when did everyone else find out? 2 ways to answer that. Technically, the pieces had all been in place for years. Publicly, it happened on one single day, November 30th, 2022. A quiet research demo went online with almost no fanfare. And this is what that little demo did in its first 2 months.
100 million people, faster than any consumer app before it. It took TikTok 9 months to reach that, and Instagram 2.5 years.
One number. That's what a decade of quiet curves buys you. 100 million strangers in 8 weeks.
So where did the gold rush actually land? 10 years after that bedroom, the field looks nothing like a lonely little contest.
It's a full-blown race now. Billions in chips, whole warehouses of them humming out in the desert.
That 1 in 6 error Erica showed us from 2012? Gone. The model's since shoved it clean past what a person scores.
Right. As of right now, in 2026, no single lab owns it. A whole handful sit clustered at the very top.
Name them. The front runners today are things like GPT 5.5, Claude Opus 4.8, and Gemini 3.1, all within a hair of each other.
The wild part is how fast it churns. The leaderboard flips so quickly that,
7 new frontier models a year, tops.
not 7 a year, 7 in one single stretch this spring. The board flips before the reviews even post.
Yeah, okay, faster than I said.
But notice what did not change. It's still the same 3 curves. More compute, more data, better designs, just running much, much hotter.
So this is what you can actually do now. Next headline that screams a brand new best AI, don't ask which lab won.
Ask which curve moved. More chips, more data, a smarter design. That one question cuts clean through every launch.
That's the whole game. A decade of hype and doom, and underneath all of it, 3 quiet curves that crossed once and just never stopped climbing. Before I run it back, try to say the one thing that finally made AI work in a single word. Here's the recap. It wasn't a genius, it was a crossing. 3 slow curves. Compute, data, and design. They all grew tall at the same time, and a lab toy became a tool 100 million people grabbed in 2 months.
And the thing you can carry out the door tonight, next AI headline you read, ask which of the 3 curves actually moved. You'll sound smarter than half the panel on television.
Next time we go under the hood of that 2017 design itself, the one idea that quietly powers every chatbot you've ever used, and why a single research paper changed everything.
If this made the last 10 years click into place, subscribe and like the video. We're building this whole series into one clear map of how AI actually works, piece by piece. And here's the one I'll leave with you. Move 37 looked like a mistake until it looked like genius. So, when a machine does something we can't explain, how do we tell genius from error? Tell me in the comments.
That covers everything I wanted to make sure landed today.
I'm Professor Erica. Thanks for spending some of your day back here in the machine with us, and I'll see you in the next one. That is the whole picture. Be good to yourself out there, and thank you for watching. Professor Erica.